Welcome to the Sideshow. Today is day 3 of our creative week, and we have the Beer, Bourbon, and a Movie podcast hosting. It's Von Harris and Tawania Pettus. And, their podcast is really interesting. It combines two things I personally love. Well, 3, beers, bourbons, and movies. So, you can't really go wrong. And I'll let them introduce their guests. So take it away, Von and Tawania.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Welcome aboard. We're going to talk about the art of the side hustle tonight. Tawania and I are going to be talking to some great panelists, and we're going to just kind of break it down, explain what the art of the side hustle is, when's the right time to start the hustle, what motivates you in your hustle, and when's the right time to make some money off of it. And we have some great panelists with us tonight. We have Nate from Palette Group. And we have Azod, who's a copywriter with White & Kennedy, but he also has a Stop Shop Motion Sports. And then we have Tom, who is the co-dean at AdHouse. So we'll let everybody introduce themselves. Let's start with Tawania. We're going to just talk a little bit about what brought us to Beer, Bourbon, and a Movie.
Right. So as we were introduced, Tawania, this is Vaughn, and we are the hosts of Beer, Bourbon, and a Movie. It's about us, 2 filmmaking cinephiles dedicated to the art of film, the taste of a good beverage, and everything in between. We are film buffs, super cinephiles, film buddies, and we went to film school together and would have these conversations after seeing films. And then, of course, they would involve his favorite bourbon, my favorite beer, and we would have these really interesting, detailed conversations. And after a while, we started having them around people, or people would be around us, like friends or whatever. And we just thought we should make a podcast after a while. I mean, we thought maybe it'd be a YouTube at first, but it turned out to be an audio thing, and it may revert backwards. But it always becomes a big conversation in which we start off as film, which is very thematic in itself. We try to mimic the films, match the films together in a sense, throw in a little bit of the beverage, and then whatever else falls into place. So sometimes we get historical context. Sometimes we get some current ideas of what's going on in society. We're both Black, as you can tell. I'm queer. There's a lot of things that come out of our lives that blend into this world, and it always becomes a conversation, and we just love it.
Yeah. For sure. It's just been a fun ride to jump into something outside of what we do in our work lives. Because I myself, I work at TBWA as an operations person and a campaign manager. And so it's good to have another outlet outside of the work environment. That's what the side hustle is really all about.
Right. And I'm a cinematographer. And of course, I'm obsessed with the image. So it's really interesting to always really equate that together. And it's been interesting to really be able to teach people things. So teaching them about beer and how things are made and the spices and the flavors and what goes into it. And then teaching them about the craft itself and how important that is, and making sure that it's told in layman's terms so people can understand. We're not talking over your head. We're fans also.
Right. And my side hustle within that is producing. I like to produce. That's what I gained the most out of film school. So that's why I like to jump into it. So let's just get started. And first, you guys introduce yourself. Let's start with Nate.
Nate Nichols, founder, creative director of Palette Group. It's a creative agency and production company based in Bed-Stuy. And I'm also the co-founder of Allyship in Action, a summit series on anti-racism and elevating marginalized communities' voices.
Excellent.
Okay. Azod?
My name is Azod Abedikichi. I guess my side hustle would be considered sports claymation. I don't really know that I have a side hustle or think of it as a side hustle, but we can talk more about that later. I'm excited to talk to y'all about that and maybe get some tips from y'all on it.
Sure. And Tom.
Hey there, I'm Tom Christmann. I am a freelance creative director. I'm also the co-dean of AdHouse Advertising School and the host of the A-List podcast, which is how I got involved with AdHouse. So all those things are side hustles in one way or another. I'm just a bunch of side hustles shoved together.
And our paths almost crossed at TBWA, but I missed you by a few years.
Oh yeah, I was there till what, 2002, something like that, 2003.
Oh, well, we actually could overlap. We'll talk offline about it.
Okay, all right.
For sure.
It was a big place.
Oh yes, for sure. So let's just jump into the side hustle a little bit. So let's just start with first of all, what motivated you guys to start your side hustle? Nate, you can jump
I feel
in.
like my life is like a side hustle. I feel like I'll never forget, just being a kid in like Norwalk, Connecticut, where I grew up, and feeling like I didn't have like anything to show for my existence. And I just like feel like I didn't have an identity, and I couldn't contribute value that I felt validated in or excited about or energized about. And then I stepped up to my brother's, gateway computer that he built. My brother was a spoiled one, and I was like the black sheep. And so he built two computers, and one was accessible. And I'll never forget just finding GIMP on the computer and playing around in GIMP, which is like prehistoric Photoshop, and kind of finessing my way through designing things and putting together like a GeoCities back in the day. And I'll never forget like MySpace and Black Planet and like Behente and like all these websites where you can kind of create things. And so my side hustle in high school was like making fly MySpace graphics, and it was just energizing. And so for me, the side hustle was a way to feel like my identity was associated in, taking up space in a way that felt self-expressed, that felt that contribute in a way that was reflective of the way I was feeling or someone else was feeling, and helping them sort of shape their identity on the internet in the early days. And so for me, that's kind of how my side hustle, and probably to this day, is still sort of grounded, is how can I be self-expressed in a way that's reflective of how I'm feeling and how I want to exist and walk around in the spaces that I do.
I got a couple of things that push me, and they're like the curiosity of like learning something new and wanting to make things. When I first went freelance the first time, I said to myself, I'm going to write a blog called "We're All Freelance," and I'm going to make this philosophy where I talk to people and I say, even if you're in a job, you should feel like you're freelance. You should act like you're freelance, and in that you should always be doing something for yourself. You should always be making sure that you're learning from that job and not just doing it day after day. So whenever I feel like I'm not learning at something, I always make it a point to be like, all right, I got to move on from this thing. Don't just drop it, but think about what's next, because that's when you're, so side hustles help you learn things faster, because you can, nobody's watching, you're doing your own thing.
Right.
I love how you guys evolved into beer, bourbon, and a movie. It was going to be a film, and then it was going to be a pod, and it turned into a podcast. Right. You just go, you learn as you go, and you go, well, that's the easiest. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the best way,
Yeah, definitely.
And you find your way to goodness.
Yeah, I would say I definitely agree with both you guys. For me, like with you, Nate, it's like life is a hustle. And then on that same point in time, it's, everything's kind of building into another thing or going into the next thing. So for me, it's like the structure of thinking of it on the side and thinking of when's time to mash the gas and go after this, or when's the time to break and turn it and do something way different. But I feel like the hustle is always turned on. It's just shifting to different gears. And it's just trying to find the right time. So the motivation, to me, I don't have a problem with that. I just have a trouble with figuring out when is when, like for each one, but the motivation is not the problem. I don't think for me. It's just trying to figure out which one's the one to put the gas on.
So that's great. So that leads us into a great question. Can you guys sort of explain your process?
Yeah.
How does it all begin? What's the magic for you in your own way?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind going first, I think Tom said it, nailed it. To me, it's just get started. I have the hardest time getting started. So I know that if I can break that barrier, the race is going. And I'll figure things out along the way. My background was in editing. I went to film school and I got really into post-production. And that mindset was anything can be saved. And I know that's not the ideal thing you want to hear as an editor. People say on set, like, we'll fix it in post kind of thing, but anything can be saved. It can always be turned slightly different. It may come in as one way and it may go out as another. So I don't know. I think that's probably where my head is most of the time. Is the starting is going to be the one that's hard, but I promise if you just start moving, you start finding stuff and you find things you would have never thought of. It's just good motion.
Nate, you want to go? You want to go next?
You guys want to go next?
I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I think like, the motivation thing stems from one of two places, typically for me. And they always wound up in an obsessive point. There's like there's this curiosity, or there is this burning need that I see in a community or a group of people that I feel like I can truly support and like really just invest my energy into being a platform for. And I think that's why, I'm a CD and I have a boutique agency, and we have this summit series that has a very specific impact and service. And so it's either like that, I want to help like so badly using the knowledge, the experiences, the resources that I have, because I didn't have that growing up. I don't have a dad. I don't know my dad. My mother, she struggles with mental challenges. And so, it's the roles have swapped. So I have to like support her more so than her supporting me. And so I've always been there to support people that I admire and appreciate. And then there's always this curiosity thing of, like the challenge of curiosity, like, can I edit? Can I cut together like a dope story using stock video and, finding really cool, music that I really find, stimulating and dynamic and engaging. And then that curiosity rabbit hole leads me into the whole new world of, a new capacity and new outcomes of my creative output. Like if, these Allyship and Action Summits that we do and the Freelancer Cyber Summits that we did, there are these 10-minute waiting room videos. And all these were free. And now we have like corporate sponsors, which is insane. We've only been doing this for like 7 months. And the whole time we're just doing it because the community we want to serve was freelancers and then marginalized communities. And so just serving, it's like both things. But I took this thing that I started learning in editing and using like music and sound design and the little knowledge that I had the past year, and cut together these 10-minute masterpieces of like a black screen. Like humans staring at a black screen and the screen just talking to them with this great music and sound design because of this obsession to like, how can I make a black screen cool? And so that curiosity and that desire sort of like feeds into it. And then like, how do I serve? I think those are my main two like motivational anchors in my side hustles.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that in talking about your process. And Azod, you hit a note that I always use as a producer, that it could always be saved. So there's got to be a way. It's always about figuring out the angle and the best way to get to it in the process. And I do it as a project manager at the agency now, and I've done it in my film work as a producer. So I think it's very interesting to realize that throughout whatever the process is, you just really have to think about all the angles, and there is no, basically. There is just always another way to figure it out. So
and it's never ruined, it's always like, oh, how could I mean, if Nate hadn't made those waiting screens so cool, and I remember them from the Allyship Summit, we would have just sat there anyway. It wouldn't have, but they were so cool that it like adds to this, like you want to talk about them, you want to be a part of it. It also shows that he cares a lot about your experience as a viewer and sitting there. So those are all important things.
Yes.
And my process always starts with like wanting to help somebody. I wanted to help my friend Lauren Slaff, who had started AdHouse and was now in New Mexico, and she's a chef in New Mexico, and she sort of has that as her main thing now, and AdHouse had become a real side hustle far away, and she wasn't really in the business anymore, but she was still doing AdHouse. and I wanted to help her like make it cool, make it like, I looked at her Facebook page and I was like, wow, we got to do something here, Lauren. I mean, you're falling off, this is years ago. So I said to her, well, I'll have some of I was chief creative officer of DeMassimo Goldstein at the time. I said, I'll have some of the young people at the office come up with an ad campaign or something for you, and nothing really grabbed me, nothing grabbed her. And then we said, like, the school is all about having classes with real working creatives in the places at the time, in the places where they work, and because we used to go to agencies back in the day before the COVID. So everybody would come to the agency and they'd learn from a teacher. So we thought, wouldn't it be great to sit at the feet of these greats in advertising and hear their origin stories and get inspired by them? So young people in the business, and this has been a thing for me. I came from a poor family in New Jersey. I barely made it into FIT, otherwise I would have went to Kane College. And, it was one of those things where it was like, I kind of just fell into this business. And I think if more kids knew about this business in high school, then more kids, the kids that are making the cool TikToks and playing on the Casio computers of today, and experimenting, they should be in this business, and they're not going to be. The people who get in this business are the people who have enough money to go to 4 years of school and say, I don't want to be a lawyer. Right. And then like, I just heard about advertising, so I'm going to go back to 2 years of school. So those are the people that get into this business because they have that kind of time and money. I'd like to help. So that's what AdHouse has become. Our vision for it is to get it into high schools, to get it into younger and younger places, so that kids can see this business for what it is, because it's a great way to make a living.
That's
Absolutely,
awesome.
for sure.
I agree. I agree with you, Tom, and Nate, especially. I mean, it's to sound silly, the art is for the people. So it's just, when we work on the podcast, it's about, I don't want you to just watch this film. I want you to absorb it. I want it to wash over you. I want you to understand what the person, the director, the art director, the cinematographer, what anyone in that particular context of the conversation was trying to do, was trying to show you, was trying to share. And it's really important that you understand where they were coming from and what sort of elements they were trying to use to create it, because it really meant something to them. And they were really trying to share in a way that they hoped that you saw. And so it's important for us in our show, for me to like really express that, especially in the more cinematic context, which is usually like my specialty.
Yeah, and I'm always coming from heart. For me, it's all about the emotion that the film brought to me and how I felt about it, what that journey was about for the characters. I love coming of age stories, and I'll talk about it 24 hours.
Sunday.
I love those stories. So, and I think it's something, because I grew up in the South, in South Carolina, and I know, Azod, you have some Southern roots too. So,
Don't.
Oh, it's no Mississippi for you?
Do I sound like I'm from Mississippi? Yeah, I am.
Exactly.
Everybody tells me, you sound like Billy Bob Thornton as soon as I open my mouth.
Right. So,
way worse. It used to be so bad.
It's these kind of stories that, always resonate with me, and what the advertising could be. Because to your point, Tom, for me, I didn't know what advertising was, but I was one of the few people at my school that wanted to really jump into advertising in the creative space and not just go into like broadcasting, which other journalism majors were doing. I actually wanted to go into advertising and public relations. And so it was just this new space. And, I was one of the few Black people in the program, and I also have a disability. I'm in a wheelchair, but, I'm running around with cameras. And even in film school, I had cameras and equipment strapped on my lap, and I'm running through the city filming stuff and doing what you had to do just to learn the craft of creating these things. So I think it's good that you're trying to reach out and reach back and get these younger students, because you're right, that's where the industry is going to go.
Yeah, definitely, Tom. I love what you're doing with the kids in the community, because it's the level of self-expression. I feel like them have access to right now is ridiculous. Like they don't need to run around with bags over their shoulders. They just need a phone, and they're like they're just moving, and they're way more creative than we'll ever be at the years that they have. But their clock is insane. So yeah, I feel that.
You had GIMP. They have Canva, which is like Canva. I don't understand. It's like magic. It's like some kind of crystal ball. Like I'm even an okay art director on Canva.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how the pandemic has changed the side hustle in your hustles.
I think it's become like we're all the same level now. Like we're like Nate ran a show that was as good as anything I've seen from Cannes or the One Show or it was great. And that can be done with very few people now.
Yeah, those three of us behind the scenes, literally.
That's crazy.
But there was a group of people doing creative though too. So like I can't say that. There was some like Amy Rodbeck, she like murdered the creative game, and we had set the foundation with the Freelancer Cyber Summit. And Steffi, my life partner and also my business partner, she's German and she has this like unique spirit and hustle about her where it's almost like she's like not German. Yeah. Because like this Germans are radically conservative and radically safe, but like she has this like aspect of her of like, what are we gonna do now? Like, so like what, and when she says that, it's like, what's the hustle? Like, what is the move we're gonna make? And she asked me that question March fucking 13th. And then Freelancer Cyber Summit was like 2 weeks later, and then tweeted our first event, and then 4 events later, it was like Allyship in action on June 18th. And yeah, it's just, I think the pandemic has, radically changed the level of access to community, and like there no longer is a need for gatekeepers, and I think the gatekeepers are useless, and people are now seeing the value of us as people who have side hustles in the level that we're able to produce at in a way that, you couldn't, because everyone was doing the same basic commercial level shit. Like we don't have access to that anymore. And so like, who are the people producing at a level that's unique and dynamic, but it's this new type of commercial experience that we're creating that resonates even more with the next generations. And I think people are starting to open their eyes to that sort of level of production that's elevated, but doesn't feel that it's not all like 4K, beautiful, like lush footage. It's like, it's the level, but it's not visually that same aesthetic. And I don't know how to articulate it, but people are more open to that experience in receiving and consuming content. And I think the pandemic has just opened people up to that, as well as just being like, who the fuck am I? Like my ego should go, because we're all like at the same level dealing with the same shit. And so, yeah, I feel like everyone's just more open to talking. Like I've never had access to more CMOs and CEOs. Someone's like, you got to meet the CEO of Microsoft. And I'm like, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. So can we just make that happen? And like, I'm like, okay, like sure. But I think we're just more acclimated to that now. I think it's a great place for everyone to be right now. So I'm super grateful, on that side of it. But obviously the lives lost are not to be forgotten, from Black lives to, the lives lost due to the pandemic and Corona. And so, yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I said my piece. Pass the rock.
My turn to.
Yeah,
Sure.
what about you, Zod?
Well, I think back what you just said, Tom. The playing field has been so leveled, and I felt like such a tension during the whole pandemic of when you think about the side hustle. Okay, now it's time to start making stuff because now there's great opportunities, But for whatever reason, I'm so fixed on being intuitive to things and how I'm feeling about creating. I have been nothing but just sitting back during it all and feeling like it's resting, feeling like it's observing, trying to take in as much as I'm seeing and be in the moment as much as possible. And it's frustrating because all I want to do is just go out and create. That's what I love to do. And to make myself sit back and take in all these stories and see everything that's happening and hope that that seed becomes a plant, to something in the future. It's just frustrating because you see it's such a beautiful time to get your stories out and to create stuff, because for a while there was nothing to experience. So it's been helpful, but it's been like tough at the same time.
Tom?
Oh, I am tired of seeing my face on Zooms. Aren't you? Aren't you tired?
I like seeing your face.
Aren't you tired of seeing my face? No,
Dude, I'm so tired.
It's just
very tired.
It's just and people are working way longer every day. I don't think that's healthy. So I try not to do that. I try to cut it off at a certain time. It's hard though, because you want to get stuff done and you don't change clothes. So it's you're doing your side hustle at one point, you're doing your real job, you're talking about your side hustle, you're talking so it's all in one big room. You're meeting the CEO of Microsoft in that same room, sitting there in your pajamas. And it's crazy and surreal. I think when we get back to getting together and we have a vaccine and we can do it safely, I think it's going to be a revolution of creativity. I think it's just going to be like a huge tsunami of creativity. It depends on what happens next week. Everybody, get your votes in, please. Do not put them in the mail anymore. Too late. Yeah. Walk them over to your county clerk, please.
Bright and early Saturday morning.
Because if that happens, then the next 4 years are going to be awful.
The next 4 years will be Canadian, is what the next
maybe. A lot of poutine in my future.
Exactly. Poutine and Molson I can drink.
They do have good beers up there, yeah.
They do have excellent beers. I'm excited.
And bourbons.
I might change my mind just even if he loses.
But I think my first time freelancing was 2011 to 2013, and I learned to fend for myself then. So this pandemic, I was like, oh, I know how to do this. And also I'm Gen X. I'm Gen X. So we remember, we're latchkey kids, man. Our parents didn't come home, and we just watched, we watched Voltron, and then
absolutely,
and then we went out and rode our bikes. We know how to hang out by ourselves. I really like walking around my town. I am like having flashbacks, because it's like, this is how days used to be when I was a kid. Like we just walked around. There was nothing on, so we just walked around. So I'm kind of trying to enjoy that about it.
Yeah, there was something like relaxing about the chaos at first for me. It was like, oh, no one knows what to do right now. That's sort of how I've always felt, and there was a settling of the being in the moment. I'm just like, everyone's sort of trying to figure it out and grasping for anything right now, and that's sort of like my life experience. And so I felt really at home over the past 8 months, with all of the chaos going on. And, it's sort of like when the day after Trump was elected, 4 years ago, there was this ominous, like, gray cloud over America and the world. Like, someone just sucked the air out of the fucking planet. And, if you're a Black person, a person of color, you're just like, well, this is the same old shit we've been dealing with for fucking decades. Now y'all get a taste of it, like centuries.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome. Right? Sorry I didn't get a red carpet. Right. Yeah, sorry, but like, welcome to the bigotry we've been dealing with for centuries. And so it was like that experience again. Just coupled with the racial, the not even, because there's still racial challenges with the pandemic, you know, given the community you're in, but there was just like this experience that I felt really relaxed and comfortable in. To your point, Tom, it's just like, yeah, I get this chaotic moment. I feel at home here. Let's get it on.
It's like, okay, the worst has happened. We're all out of work.
Yeah.
There's like bad things. So, you know,
Right.
now we can all move on.
Right.
And we can focus, you know. It does give you more time to focus on your side hustle. It's just you have to get in that mind space of like, it's okay that this isn't going to pan out right now. Like, I can do this because I enjoy doing it. And I think that's really important, is like doing something you enjoy doing, some piece of art, you know, making something that you enjoy making. You should do it. It doesn't matter. Like when people say like, oh, well, can you make money out of it? It's like, it doesn't matter. It will come if you get to a certain point. And a lot of it is luck, but the process of enjoying, like you said, Vaughn, the process of making something and the process of figuring it out, that is everything. That is the feeling that you want. You want to lose yourself in this thing, whatever it is, you know, whether it's a show or a novel or a deck of cards you're making or a school. You want to just kind of like, you want to serve it and see if you can make it go on its own. You know, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I want to like piggyback on that thought, because I think some people they romanticize, you know, the obsession a little bit too hard and forget that they could put it down. Like you could be on a side hustle and it's okay to be like, I'm done with it now, and close the chapter and move on to something else. And I feel like some people just like obsessed and associate their identity too much with the side hustle. I was like talking about that earlier. Like, I want my identity to feel validated in my self-expression. But I'm also like very aware that like your ego is like complete bullshit, and you can't like become overzealous in one aspect of your identity and let that be the only anchoring aspect of who you are, including the side hustle. So like in college, I used social media to get hundreds of clients as a graphic design student in Philadelphia. I didn't know anybody, but I used social media as my mechanism. And then I realized through hustling through social media that I could use that to make my way into digital marketing, thus being advertising. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get a job at an agency because my portfolio wasn't strong enough. And I knew I didn't want a job at an agency because I didn't like cubicles. So it was like, how am I going to get access to this space? So I used social media as my side hustle, sold that as consulting to get design jobs to bolster my creative body of work over 10 years. To now our portfolio at Palette Group is, you know, Foot Locker, Chevrolet, you know, Cora tampons, you know, all these awesome projects and brands that we worked with over the past, you know, 8 years. But I also don't do social media marketing anymore. I hate it. I was like, fuck that shit. I don't want to deal with the stress of figuring out a tweet for an hour. Like, that's stupid, you know? And for a website, for a while, website design was a side hustle for me. And then I was like, that's stupid. That's too stressful for me because I don't want to keep up with Chrome updates, IE updates, and like all these other different other updates to maintain like
It's
code,
like,
you know, syntax. Fuck that.
I think a lot of times, like a lot of side hustlers, like once they learn something and they get it, that's when they move on. They're like, all right, yeah, I get that. Like,
Yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
And they can move on. And, you know, you always have that experience where you can tell somebody how to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big drive for side hustles, and why they're awesome is because those are the ways that you express like that curiosity, that like make yourself a little bit better at that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what a podcast was or how to do it. And when I said to Lauren, like we should make it a podcast where I talk to people about how they got into the business, then I said, shit, how do I make a pot? Like, what do I need? And I knew we had a music guy upstairs. So I said, like, let's get a producer and we'll go up there and we'll ask him, like, how much would you charge to do like an hour with a phone patch? And we don't have any money. Could we do it as like we give you some business? And so we did 3 of them just as like a experiment. And I called up friends, Greg Hahn, Ty Montague, and who was the other one? He's the head of McCann now, Rob Riley. And you know, I knew them from previous lives, previous jobs, and I said, hey, would you get on the phone with me and we'll talk about how you got into the business? I had no script. I had no, like, I didn't do like show notes. I didn't do like, I just got on the phone with a friend and said, where'd you grow up? What'd you do? Where'd you,
Yeah.
you know, and it turned out to be really fun. And I loved doing it because it was just a conversation.
So much fun.
And then I had to figure out, okay, how do I get this up on SoundCloud? How do I give it a code that like all the, you know, podcast crawlers could, I just Googled it. I Googled it and I figured it out, and I did it myself, and I paid for the SoundCloud membership. And, you know, it was a labor of love. And then it started to become something that people like would write me about. And that's when I was like, what? People are actually listening to this.
Right.
So that's how it happens.
Yeah. I think to your point, Tom, we have a similar story in which we were discussing the podcast amongst ourselves. And at Von's office, he was talking about it around, you know.
Yeah.
And then he came to me and said, listen, I have this guy who I've been talking to about it. And it turned out that this guy wants to like produce for us and buy a mixer and do this whole thing. And I was like, how much does he charge? And he was like, no, it's for free. He just wants to be a part of it. And we did one episode. I'm like, this guy's our producer. And it turned out to be Alex Campbell. So shout out to Alex if you're watching.
Alex.
But and Alex was pretty right. Alex was pretty synonymous in creating our sound. Like we would have never had great sound without Alex. We'd have been like, you know, 2 echo mics and like
right.
You know, Alex taught us about sound and construction and conception in a way that was outside of the box of film, but had similar qualities. And yet we couldn't, I don't think we would have had the podcast we have without him. I mean, he helped us create the opening track and how it should go. And our sort of like, he chopped us up into like intros and outros and, you know, all these little like tabs we have. And
yeah, it's important to find those people and say like, okay, you do that and do it your way. And kind of give it over to that, you know, the process.
And our producer now, he's Kevin Fairchild. He's more like a showrunner. So he's good at keeping us on time with the show. Making sure that we're on all our topics that we want to address. And so, you know, I
need one of those.
Yeah. Kevin Fairchild, your man.
I was going to say, Kevin Jermaine, we can hook you up to him.
Yeah, he's in the chat, so send him a note. But just so everybody knows, you know, it's just those things. It's a kinship of minds and people coming together to make these kinds of things happen. Because sometimes you just can't do it by yourself. So it's good to know who to reach out to, and luckily we're all in the industry in a way that we can find people to tap into. Just to do these kinds of things. And that's what I suggest to everybody when they're looking to do something outside of what they normally do. Reach back and look at your friend group, look at the people that you work with to find a source or some information that can lead you to something else, because it could turn into something else. Because like you said before, initially we wanted to do like a video thing because we've been working in film. So we wanted to do video. But you know, the real mastery of it was the podcast. And you know, now that there's so many out here and just so many different conversations you can have, I think it's just good to know that you can tap into your resources a little bit.
And I think part of what keeps us going and what I think makes us a success in our own right, you know, without any accolades and without anyone like patting us on the back, it's the conversation we have. We have a conversation like two friends in a room with no one else, you know, and then Alex jumped in and he would bring in history for things we had no idea. We did an episode of Dunkirk and we would have never had the context he had, but he had all these like really interesting nuggets that he could put in. And that just created a whole conversation that people always say to us, we feel like we were in a backyard somewhere with a beer or bourbon drink in our hand and listening to you guys have a conversation. We were a part of it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us successful.
Yeah.
Y'all have a great chemistry. Y'all shit talk each other.
Yes.
You paint all the shots. It's really good.
The shit talk is my favorite part. So like we've understood, like some of you guys have made this side hustle a full-time gig, and some of you have still have it on the side a little bit and do some other jobs. So I kind of want to combine two questions in one, in a sense, in saying, I understand how, if you can explain how you have improved your hustle to a full-time position, but also what drives it if it's a full-time position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think so.
you go ahead.
Azod,
Nick.
you got it.
Okay.
No, you got it.
Well, for me, it's kind of, I have a hard, I guess what I would say side hustle in my head, when I look back at where I came and really started doing the animations, to me, it felt like it was more of like a liberation. I was trying to get away from, as much as I love editing, I was trying to get away from editing. I just did 2 documentaries and it was a long project. And then I got the motivation to take a break, fully stop. I was lucky I didn't have to do it on the side. I just hit stop, and probably for the later question of when's a good time to start monetizing your side hustle, I'm probably going to be the worst person to ask on that. I had literally hit break on everything and just started cleaning out the savings account.
Oh,
And
wow.
I kept doing it, and I was like both Nate and Tom both said, I was in love with the process. I had got obsessed, so much so that it was more exciting to work all night than to sleep. And I would do that over and over. And how I got to improve it now that I look back later, like, I guess I just got healthier habits of trying to control it, but I do miss the obsession and how to get back into the process, because the results don't even really matter. The money doesn't really motivate me enough. Like, that feels like that gets, loses flavor quick. But it's just, if you're in love with the process, then that's the key objective, is trying to get into that full process and stay in it and try to find ways to shift it, to stay sane, I guess. I don't think that really answered your question. I ramble too much too.
No. I appreciate a rambler because I'm there too. But that worked.
I haven't monetized mine. I mean, AdHouse is probably the most monetized. The A-list wasn't. I mean, it's an ad for AdHouse basically, and that's how it started. And then when Lauren asked me to, like, Lauren said, well, I want to move on and not do AdHouse anymore, so I'll either close it or I'll hand it to you and Paul. We were like, all right, we're ready for this, and so that's a job now, but it can't be a full-time job because it's not big enough, and we don't charge that much, and we give half of the money to the teachers, and it's really just kind of this thing that I'm hoping to build. Maybe when I'm 60, I can say, okay, I'm going to do this full-time now. But I still have to do, the freelance creative stuff, which I also love doing. And so it's finding a balance for that. I don't know when to make the transition to full-time on it. It's I think Nate's further ahead than all of us on that.
Still figuring it out. I feel like every time I settled into a space where I'm like, all right, I feel like I'm thriving in this area of what was a side hustle, and I've managed to monetize it. For example, I wasn't a director and now I'm a director. Like, most of the body of work on Palette Group's website, all the commercial work, I directed. And I didn't go to film school. I went to school for graphic design.
Yeah.
And so sort of every time I side hustle, it's for the main purpose of understanding the process, so I could make the platform of Palette Group, ensure it has the right systems and people are set up for success. Because if I don't know what it takes for Vaughn to do his best work, as a producer, then I can't set him up for success. If I don't know what Tawana's role looks like as a DP or cinematographer, not that I've ever picked up a camera and fucking shot anything, I would never. However, understanding what a good frame looks like and, the thirds and understanding the science and the colors is something that, I obsessed over to the point where I'm like, okay, as a creative director, I can better understand how to staff and be more effective at my role, because I've sort of obsessed and decided to take on the idea of this role as a side hustle for a bit, just so I can appreciate the work and respect and honor the work and staff it in a way that is, dignified and set someone up for success with our systems internally. So, sometimes side hustles are functional, and to learn a process, to better yourself, to your point, to, monetize it. And so, Palette Group, I think, is a reflection of that. The name in essence is a reflection of the idea of an artist palette. Like, the creatives that we collaborate with are the paint in which, you put on an artist palette, and then our clients come to us to use this paint, to elaborate on their stories. And it's sort of like our motif on why we exist, and we're a platform for creatives. And so my life has just always been advancing my professional career through side hustles, in a way that's like fun, not alienating myself or anyone around me, fingers crossed. Yeah, I don't know, I found a way to balance. And whenever I feel like my heart isn't in a lane anymore, I just don't do it. I just don't do it anymore. I just say, okay, I'm not gonna do social media marketing anymore. And sure, it sucks, because that hustle made me some money, but in the long term, I'm going to be more fulfilled committing into the new direction that I want to cast a vision in and live in. So yeah, just throughout the sort of the arc of my career, it's just been side hustles, because no one's ever given me anything. I never had access to anything. I had to always fight for every fucking red cent that I have.
Understandable. So we're running kind of low on time right now, but I just wanted to end this conversation with just asking you guys, what advice would you give someone ready to start their side hustle?
Great question.
Anybody can jump in.
Just start. I think it.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah. If you're saying, "Hey, I'm ready to start. What should I do?" Do whatever the next step is. So if you want to make a podcast, get your phone out and start, recording yourself. If you want to do animation, start taking an animation class, get an animation program. Just get to it, and I think don't worry about monetizing it right away. Like, don't look, because if you're doing that, then go sell drugs or something. Like, there's way more lucrative things out there. But you should do something that you want to do, and you want to get good at, and just for its own sake. There's a great book that I'm reading right now called How to Write One Song by the guy from Wilco. I'm blanking on his name right now.
I saw his interview this weekend on CBS. Yes.
Yeah, it's a great little book called How to Write One Song, and it's really about how to come up with an idea, and how to think like an idea person, because it's random, and it's also work. It's sitting down every single day and doing the same thing. And, what he does is he writes out a bunch of random words, and he finds a bunch of random words and sticks them together. And he starts, it's that simple for him. But, find your process and do it every day, and do it because you love it.
Absolutely. I agree that. Totally. Anyone else? Any good advice for the future?
I think Tom nailed it. Yeah, it's just get started. Don't overthink it. I was obsessed with thinking a lot. I went to some weird reenactment of something in Virginia where it was like Thomas Edison was giving a speech, and he talked about how important it is to think every day. And I was like, awesome, it's January. I'm going to think every day this year, like really spend dedicated time thinking. And then when I got lost in what I was doing a year later, I realized thinking is like, it's water. You need it, but too much of it can really be a big problem. You can overthink it. So just get started. Don't overthink it. And you'll find yourself along the way. You'll figure out the stuff. You don't need to know how to make a podcast or how to do anything. You just need to know how to take small little steps every day and just stay consistent, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like break their two thoughts down, I think in a functional way. You know, I think you always have like this, you're always gonna have like these crazy ideas, right? Like you're gonna think like, I want to do this, this. Like, have those thoughts, throw everything against the fucking wall, but also identify the systems and the tools it takes to like funnel your ideas into a finished product. Like if you do the work to identify the systems and the tools, which is just processes, right?
Right.
Then whatever you're thinking will come out on the other side in a way you'll be happy with, proud of, or just like needs improvement. And so don't just think about it, but also like do the work to identify the tools, the systems, and the processes. When I made the decision to be like, I think I want to be a director, I like obsessed. I found the directors that I wanted to be like. I found Studio Binder and I just obsessed. I listened to the podcast. Like I did all the fucking things, you know, until I felt like, cool, I got my Studio Binder templates. I got this, like these templates. I got this system, like cool. Like I understand the ecosystem to a point where like we could produce, you know, $250,000 we could produce with 100K, we could produce with 50K, we could produce with 10K, we could produce with 5K. And I could produce with no money because I feel like it. And so we understood the processes and the systems. It didn't matter what the idea was because I understood that the processes and systems would help refine the ideas.
Absolutely. Could I just add to it? I know we're moderating, but
of course.
What I think is awesome about it, and as a woman, as a Black woman, as a queer woman, I know that we are minimal in the room usually, and I can only imagine when I see my little nieces what they must think. I mean, I've definitely put a camera in one or two of their hands and try to ink in some artistic abilities, and I see them eking out. And I think of what I was going through when I was this avid cinephile who was thirst to like touch that screen in some way. And I initially thought I'd be a director, of course, until I found out that was all about writing. And then I knew I was a photographer because I'd helped my uncle do wedding from time to time. He owned a 1 hour Photoshop. And so for me, it was really interesting to always be involved in the image. I knew the image was a thing, but I didn't know how to touch it. I still thought maybe direction, you know, I don't know. And so I read a book, and I really wish I had the name of the book, but if you Google this, maybe it'll come up. In the book, it was about women directors. And there was this one woman who was a director and she was a photographer. And she said, if you want to be a director, a cinematographer, you need to learn to look through the lens. And I thought, interesting. And so I asked my uncle to get me an old school Canon, like an A1, like super duper manual, so I could really understand the technique of it. And what it was I spent all my time looking through the lens and just really understanding what the world was through that little box. And now it's the only way I see it. And so I think if you are interested in something, no matter what it is, learn how to look through the eye of that visionary that you want to be. No matter what it is. If you want to be a writer, learn to journal every day. Get it out of you and learn to really get that flow down. And you end up with your own prose. If you want to be a photographer, do that. If you want to be a director, make a ton of TikToks so you can understand concept and construction and linear structure, editing. You have to really be able to understand the truth. If you want to be a sculptor, if you want to be an animator, you really got to like understand what clay feels like in your hand. It's a different experience from looking at it. So I think like if you really, really, really have a hustle, then everyone thinks you're crazy about. Once you look through the eyes of that visionary you so desperately adore, you'll feel like you'll learn to speak the same language they are. And ultimately, you won't feel like an alien anymore.
Mhm.
Amazing. Well said. That's the one like part of the whole thing that we're all gonna hang on right there. That was really well said.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think we might be done.
Yeah.
Any parting ideas?
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts? You all talked out and we're drunk now because
Well,
I've
I think
drinking.
the sideshow.
Bourbon and carrot juice is weird together. That's my.
Yeah, that's a weird combination. That's
It's a weird combination.
That's
At
not-
least,
that's-
at least try
that's-
honey next time.
I think the sideshow was a long time coming, and I think I'm glad it's here, and this is a really cool event and a really cool thing that happened. It wouldn't have happened without all of this craziness that we have this year. So that's something good. Some flowers coming out of the concrete of this weirdness.
And the sideshow is not over, everybody. There's more
Yeah,
days
there's
of sideshow events, so please
Yeah.
check them out. You
Yeah.
still have 2 more days of great shows, so make some time just to listen, because I think some good conversations are happening for sure.
Right. It's creativity week, as they say on the website. So
Absolutely.
get it in, register, do everything you can to like catch up. And
You're an
I
artist.
just, yeah, absolutely. I just want to plug our show a little bit, and you guys are welcome to do the same. Listen, there's nothing like free publicity, man. Put it out there. So we're Beer Bourbon and a Movie. Like I said, 2 filmmaking cinephiles dedicated to the art of film, the taste of a good beverage, and everything in between. We're on every social media site you can think of. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. More to come, I'm sure. And please check us out. We're available. If you like shit talking and booze drinking, we're your guys.
And movies. Don't forget
And
about
movies. Can't forget the movies part.
Hey Vaughn, have y'all watched The Last Tree yet?
No.
British indie film. Oh my God, watch that, and I would love to talk about that with you on your podcast.
Oh,
All right.
please. By all
All right.
means. We love guests.
having guests. We love having guests on the show.
Welcome.
For sure.
Please come through. And then if you have any suggestions, by all means, send it over. We'll have you on the show, and we love to talk to you about it, especially if you're passionate about it, because those make the best conversation.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And if
It's a
you want
biopic.
to,
Coming of age. Sorry, it's a coming of age, not a biopic.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds fun. look it
and
up.
if you want to help out with AdHouse, if you want to teach, we'd love to have some new teachers. If you're a working ad professional and you want to teach some kids, check us out at adhousenyc.com. And we're looking for teachers for the end of January when the sessions will start. So, send in your application there, or, just send us an email. It's not really an application, but we'd love to talk to you.
And I'll share the love, Tom, because I'm a project manager at the agency, but I know plenty of creatives and other people there that could definitely share some
Yep.
wealth with the teams.
Yep.
Great,
All
great.
right. This has been
Thank
a
you
great
guys
time.
so much.
It's been so much fun. I'm so happy we did this.
Thanks for having me.
Same. Thanks, y'all.
Gosh,
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you all.
You too.
Talk again.
we'll see you
Sure.
on the show.
Yeah.
See you on the
on-
show.
Yeah.
See you on the other side of this election.
Should we
Yeah.
cheers to
Right.
side-
Yeah.
side
Cheers.
show?
Cheers, everybody.
Side show.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
Thank you all. I really